"It looks like you might have lost my suitcase," I said.
You'll have to fill out this report.
A rather curt employee informed me. I landed at Louis Armstrong International Airport midweek, with plenty of time to spare. The editor and I would be taking a cruise from New Orleans to the Western Caribbean, but he was making his own way by train, and our ship wouldn't be leaving until the weekend 3 days from now. In the meantime, I would rent a car to explore the Gulf Coast and avoid paying triple the normal rates for a New Orleans hotel room leading up to Fat Tuesday. The editor would be in for a rude awakening, having to pay up to $1,000 a night. But I had been to the Big Easy Carnival before and knew what to expect. My mouth was watering just thinking about it all as I stood at the baggage carousel, waiting to pick up my suitcase. 2 hours later, it occurred to me that I was the only person remaining there. So I hastened to the airline counter to ask them what they had done with my suitcase, and showed them my ticket with the baggage claim stapled to the back of it. "What's the forwarding address where we should send it?" "The Norwegian Dawn cruise ship," I said. "It's leaving the port of New Orleans on Sunday." "We can't send it there," the employee said dismissively. "What's the name and address of your hotel?" "I don't know yet where I'll be staying," I said. "In that case, even if we find it, you'll have to phone Lost and Found and come back to the airport," the employee said officiously. "Why don't you just tell me where you live?" I replied, "so I can courier you another suitcase full of dead bedbugs, you miserable bastard." Actually, of course, it was only in my alter ego I said that. I was still aggrieved that I had only just recently picked up a bedbug infestation in Europe. I still had a new flight bag containing a few essentials, but I made a mental note to fly with that and a carry-on suitcase in future, and never let either of them out of my sight. I rented my car at the airport, drove downtown so I could have a quick gander at the French Quarter before heading east to see the neighboring states of Mississippi and Alabama. I found it interesting that the architects who designed this original part of town in the 18th century had shown the foresight to place it on the highest available ground, so that it wasn't destroyed by floods in successive storms, such as the ultimately deadly Hurricane Katrina, which claimed almost 1,400 lives when it battered the city in 2005. I looked for a casino on a barge where I had played poker on a previous visit, only to find that the entire facility and all its paraphernalia had been thrown ashore and smashed to pieces, with little remaining other than a few mud-bespattered playing cards. Years later, I was in New Orleans on the very day of Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday itself. It was unbelievably busy, with thousands of people converging on Bourbon Street at the same time. There appeared to have been some kind of incident, as I could see the flashing lights of an emergency vehicle. I could not move, yet people were still pushing in closer and closer. "Move back, move back, move back," we chanted in unison. But we were being pressed tighter and tighter. Hundreds of people were so compressed we started to lift off the ground. I discovered later this happens when people are packed so tightly that the crowd becomes fluid and the whole group begins to levitate. A petite woman in front of me started to cry as she got squished up against my body, but I could see only the top of her head, so I managed to get my arms around her to create a space so she wouldn't get crushed. On the balconies above us, I saw other women who did not realize we were being crushed, flashing their breasts to attract beads and toys being thrown into the crowds by crews of colorfully dressed parade participants from atop an endless procession of floats that temporarily had come to a halt. Eventually, people started backing up, and we came down to earth. It was raining slightly now as I left the parkade and headed over to Bourbon Street, after making absolutely sure it was not as crowded as that first time. Some women twerked under top hats with brightly colored feathers sticking out of them. One guy handing out hula hoops was wearing a toilet plunger on his head. I had no trouble walking on the greasy sidewalks as I was wearing thick-soled shoes that I had bought in London, unlike the cheap sneakers that caused me to skate all over the place in Volume 1. I had just enjoyed a Creole dinner of gumbo and crawfish, and I was looking up at the second-floor balconies where the locals had already staked out the best spots to see the Mardi Gras parades, when I almost bumped into someone walking straight towards me. "Nice shoes," said a big loping sort of guy. "I sure like them sneakers." The guy confronting me was about 7 feet tall, smacking his lips, finishing off a massive po' boy sandwich, and seemed intent on striking up a conversation. "I bet you $1 I know where you got them shoes," he continued. He seemed to be wearing a pretty expensive pair of huge sporty sneakers himself. I doubted he would know that I got mine in London, but he seemed quite interested in getting to know me, even though I rather impetuously told him he would never guess where I got my shoes. "Get out of here," I retorted. "I always guess right," he persisted, shouting to make himself heard above the rhythm of the passing trombones, trumpets, banjos, drums, and washboards. "You got one on your right foot, t'other on your left foot." Good one," I conceded. "Very clever of you. So now you owes me the $1. He beamed, pirouetting and bowing while doing a quick little two-step. "Fuck off," I said. Actually, I just imagined saying that. I knew I had been outsmarted, besides which he was almost a foot taller than I was, so I just grimaced, reached into my pocket and gave the guy a silver $1, which is all I had left from a quick visit to the casino. He seemed happy enough at that, although he loped off with what I felt was a disappointing paucity of gratitude, evidently in hot pursuit of another victim. Apparently it's the oldest scam in New Orleans. The editor told me several days later that some huckster pulled the same trick while he hurried to make it to an evening dinner and jazz cruise on a stern-wheeler along the Mississippi. "I betcha I can tell where you got them shoes and the street where you got them too," said the panhandler. The editor is not at all interested in fashion. You can tell that as soon as you look at him. He always wears cheap Walmart runners, which propelled him on towards the river as he tried to get away from the guy. He turned onto Canal Street, the widest boulevard in America, dividing the French Quarter from the business section, deeming it the perfect milieu to get a flavor of this uniquely swinging city and shake off the guy who was still trailing him. "You got one on each foot, and you got them on Canal Street," the guy crooned, jogging alongside to keep up the pace. "That'll be $2. The editor, rather atypically for him, stopped ever so briefly, reached into his pocket and gave the panhandler a Canadian toonie. "You win," he relented. Subsequently, the guy was still scratching his head, examining a strange coin he had apparently never seen before, with a polar bear on one side of it, as the editor scurried away on a red and yellow streetcar. He might have concluded the polar bear was quite at home, as it was bloody cold, the editor recalled. "I bought a warm jacket with New Orleans emblazoned on it, so the shoe hucksters left me alone after that. Only problem was that other people kept asking me for directions." The editor had arrived by train at the Union Passenger Terminal on Loyola Avenue, all in one piece. "I thought it should be quite relaxing," he said, "until we started to cross the Huey P. Long Bridge, soaring over the Mississippi into New Orleans. At one point we were up there in the sky in this great, heavy, double-decked Amtrak monster, way above the river, and even higher than the road below us. He wondered what would happen if it came off the tracks, and indeed learned that 10 freight cars were blown off the raised approach to the bridge in a severe windstorm 1 year later. No one was injured by some miracle, but let's just say it was a hell of a mess," he concluded. I told him how I had left the airport without my luggage. I checked back with the airline 2 days running, but they still couldn't find it. I was now able to give them the address of a hotel where I was staying in Alabama. The editor had everything he needed, of course, except for the large debit in his bank account after 3 nights of hotel bills leading up to Mardi Gras. But I held little hope of seeing my case again. Miraculously, it arrived by courier just as I was checking out of my hotel to drive back to New Orleans on cruise embarkation day. I breathed a huge sigh of relief. 5 minutes later, and I would have been on my way to a ship for the next week without much other than the clothes on my back, or even as much as a toothbrush.